A storm tore open the night sky over West Bridge as a black police department SUV suddenly swept its headlights across the silver sedan, rolling slowly along Riverside Avenue. In a split second, the siren ignited sharp as a blade. Rachel Monroe jolted, gripping the wheel. She knew instantly this was no random stop, and she was not mistaken when she recognized the silhouette stepping out of the vehicle behind her chief, Jonathan Reddick, the man who had tied the Monroe name to tragedy for more than a decade. Rain hammered against the windshield, each drop scraping her nerves like fingernails. Rachel inhaled deeply, her hand trembling slightly, though her eyes held the same sharp composure of an attorney who had faced injustice day after day. She lowered the window, icy air slashing across her face. Reddick leaned down, water dripping from the hood of his raincoat, his half-smile soaked in mockery. He did not need to speak. His presence was already a sentence. Rachel met his gaze and understood what was coming was not rain. It was the storm she had been bracing for during the past 6 months. Reddick spoke with a politeness so artificial it clung to his voice like oil, the same public charm that newspapers once called the posture of a community hero. "Your tail light is out dangerous in this weather." Rachel did not respond. Her heart felt caught between two kinds of fear, one because the police chief stood at her window, the other because she knew with absolute certainty that her taillight had been working when she left the office tonight. Then, as if to underline the performance, 2 more police cars arrived. One without lights, one without plates. No one deployed that many units for a broken tail light. Mark Davies, an officer whose name had appeared briefly in several case files Rachel was quietly investigating, moved toward the back of her car. His outline was dim through the rain, but his movements were precise, practiced far too familiar. Rachel tilted her head just enough to watch through the rearview mirror. Something shifted under Davies's jacket. Her heartbeat slammed against her skull. She wanted to run to the back, stop him, but any sudden move could be twisted into resisting an officer. Seconds sank like stones. Reddick stood blocking her view, forming a wall between her and the trunk. His calmness tightened her chest. 8 years ago, he had stood the same way in front of her father, Detective Samuel Monroe, just before a stash of drugs was conveniently discovered in his locker, and before he died in what the department called suicide. A bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating the exact moment Davies bent over her trunk, his hand slipping inside his coat. Rachel knew precisely what had just been planted, and her stomach twisted as if gripped by an icy hand. When Davies straightened, holding a sealed nylon bag, Reddick lifted an eyebrow just enough for her to catch the flicker of triumph he failed to hide. He stepped forward, raising the fabricated evidence with a grave expression. 3 kilograms of white powder, street value $150,000. The number cut deeper than the storm slicing through the wind. Rachel froze as if shoved off a cliff, but the surge of anger rooted her to the ground. "That is not mine, and you know it." Reddick tilted his head, posing like a politician on camera. What a shame that a public defender someone meant to safeguard justice would betray the system she serves. Davies grabbed Rachel's wrists. The cold cuffs clamped down each click as sharp as a verdict. As she was shoved into the patrol car, Rachel glanced toward the grocery store across the street. Someone stood in the shadows. Phone raised the screen, glowing through the rain. A witness. A thin blade of hope, piercing the suffocating despair. And in that exact moment, with rain drumming the roof like a whip, an eerie calm washed over Rachel. Because she knew this was not an ending. This was the beginning of the plan she had built in silence for half a year. A trap. Not for her. For the man trying to destroy her life for the second time. What Reddick did not know was simple Rachel Monroe was never the prey. She was the one who set the board. And tonight, he had stepped exactly where she wanted him to. At first light, Westbridge woke to a shockwave public defender. Rachel Monroe had been arrested for possessing a large quantity of narcotics. The headline drowned every truth that had not yet surfaced. Her photograph, soaked to the skin eyes reddened from a night spent fighting for survival, was placed beside a bag of white powder weighing 3 kilograms. Only hours earlier, she had stood in a courtroom defending those without a voice. Now, she was being swallowed whole by the very system she served. When reporters crowded outside the detention center, Reddick stepped up to the podium wearing an expression half regret and half pity, as if he had just lost an exceptional colleague. His voice flowed smoothly, like a speech rehearsed for weeks. It is tragic when someone meant to represent justice uses their position for personal gain. He hid the satisfied curl of his mouth, but anyone who had ever dealt with Reddick could see the triumph of a man convinced he had eliminated an inconvenient obstacle. Inside the holding cell, Rachel sat with her arms crossed on a cold plastic chair. The orange jumpsuit weighed on her shoulders like a silent accusation. She forced her breathing to remain steady but deep in her chest. Anger burned like a rising flame. It was not humiliation that hurt. It was the familiarity of it, the knowledge that this system had destroyed her father in the exact same way. And these people thought the same old trick would break her. The door suddenly opened. A small woman stepped in, tired face, sharp eyes. Not a police officer. Rachel looked up. Nina Walker, the nurse who had been convicted on narcotics charges a few months earlier. She, too, had been arrested under suspicious circumstances. She, too, had been processed by Reddick's team. Nina sat across from Rachel, lips tightening as if trying to contain something. I heard she said, "I know this is not you." Her voice was low and rough, the sound of someone who had seen this too many times to still be surprised. Rachel said nothing. She looked into the woman's eyes and found the same fear, the same helplessness, the same crushing weight of being trapped beneath the wheels of power. But unlike others, Rachel was not here to drown. She was here to flip the entire wheel. Nina slipped a small folded note from the pocket of her prison uniform and pressed it into Rachel's hand. He did the same to me, to Johnson, to Marcus, to 2 others I know. All of us either people of color or people who dared tell him no. And he always uses the same method: narcotics. Rachel tightened her grip on the paper, each name on the list stabbing like needles into her mind. A chain of victims. A pattern. The prisoner transfer alarm blared down the hallway. Urgent footsteps and clipped commands tightened the air like a pulled wire. Nina rose quickly. "He will not stop," she whispered. "This time he wants you gone for good. But I heard someone is trying to help you. You are not alone." The door locked behind her. Rachel sat still, not alone. 2 simple words, yet they felt like a hand pulling her above the waterline. From the bottom of her paper garment pocket, Rachel retrieved something she had hidden before her arrest, something no one noticed, an old wristwatch worn and ordinary, a harmless trinket at first glance. But inside the strap adjuster was a concealed micro SD card. 6 months of recordings. 6 months of tracking Reddick. 6 months of waiting for this exact moment. Maya, her younger sister, had been trained to recognize the signal. By now, Maya would know everything had begun. Rachel closed her eyes, feeling the cold metal press into her palm. Rain thudded against the cell window, each drop beating like a countdown. They thought she was prey, but every strike of rain reminded her of her father's final words before he died. You cannot fight darkness with fear. You fight it with truth. Rachel opened her eyes, and tonight, the truth was beginning to move. That morning, before the first rays of sunlight even touched the ground, Maya Monroe stood at the doorway of her sister's office. A bright red evidence seal wrapped around the handle like a cut across the eye. The hallway of the public defender's office was filled with an unnatural silence, as if everyone there was trying not to step on a landmine. Maya pushed the door open just as an evidence clerk was removing cardboard boxes labeled with Rachel's name. Each seized file felt like a piece of her sister's life being torn away. Maya watched, her eyes tight with restrained fury. She said nothing. She listened. The rustling of paper, the marking of pencils, the soft whispers of people who glanced at her, then quickly turned away, afraid of being connected to someone who had been publicly smeared. But Maya was not there to cry. She was there to find a sign. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from Attorney Price, the court-appointed lawyer representing Rachel. She asked me to tell you, check our father's old place. Just those 4 words, our father's old place, were enough. Their father had kept places no one knew about, places where he hid the things he feared would be destroyed. Maya left immediately. By the time she reached the parking lot, car horns and voices echoed around her in chaos, but she heard only her heartbeat and her father's old warning. The harder you chase the truth, the harder the truth tries to hide. You have to be smarter than it. 20 minutes later, Maya stood inside her small apartment, opening the low wooden cabinet beneath the window. Inside was an old blue plastic box, her father's fishing tackle box. Her hand trembled as she lifted the lid as if she were touching his spirit. Beneath the rusted hooks was a small waterproof pouch. She unzipped it. Inside was a black USB drive. Maya plugged it into her laptop. The screen flickered, then displayed hundreds of audio recordings, photos, financial documents, suspicious bank transfers, all meticulously organized in the precise style of Detective Samuel Monroe. The final folder was named Clear Haven Logistics. Maya's stomach lurched when she opened it. Company registration papers, a list of trucks, a map of the Riverport warehouse district, photos of Reddick entering the warehouse late at night, dates, coordinates, cargo manifests, and her father's note. They seize the drugs, then sell them back. Ringleader, J.R. Jonathan Reddick. Maya could not breathe for several seconds. Her father had found the truth, and that truth had killed him. Her phone rang, making her jump. The caller ID read Sarah Kendall, former FBI agent, Maya's college friend, the only person she trusted to analyze this mountain of data. Maya's voice was clipped. "Sarah, go to my father's cabin now. Bring your laptop. I found something that could change this entire city." By noon, Samuel Monroe's wooden cabin at the edge of Riverbend Forest had become an underground investigation hub. Sarah set her laptop on the worn wooden table, her eyes narrowing like a laser as she scrolled through the files. She could not hide her shock. "Maya, this is not just corruption. This is an organized criminal structure. Reddick is not just framing people. He is running a multi-million-dollar operation." The cabin door swung open again. Alex Rivera, the IT specialist Maya had recruited, entered carrying a box of equipment. He had hacked into the Riverport camera network. In the footage, 3 police vehicles arrived at the warehouse at 2:00 in the morning. Reddick led the way. Mark Davies followed. They carried duffel bags. When they left, the bags were gone and envelopes were in their hands. Sarah whispered, "This is where his system cracks. If the FBI sees this, he will not escape." Maya watched them work, her fists tightening. She remembered the nights Rachel stayed awake writing appeals for people no one else believed. She remembered her sister's expression the day they heard their father had died. She remembered Rachel at 17 holding their father's case files and saying, "One day, I will find what killed him." That day had come. But Maya knew one truth. With absolute clarity, Reddick would not let them take another step. Late that afternoon, as Maya walked to her car, she froze. A small piece of paper was tucked under her windshield wiper. The handwriting was familiar, rounded, even cold, sharp as a blade. "We are watching." Maya crushed the note in her hand. She did not tremble. She did not step back. She understood only one thing. The truth her father died chasing was ready to surface. But to expose it, Maya had to stay alive. And more importantly, she had to protect Rachel before Reddick struck again. That evening, the Westbridge Detention Center sat under a tired wash of yellow light spilling from the security lamps. Rachel leaned against the freezing cement wall, eyes fixed on the darkness ahead without blinking. She listened to the clinking of metal in the hallway, the footsteps of guards pacing back and forth, the muted sighs of female inmates drifting through the shadows. Everything seemed to whisper the same warning: tomorrow would decide her fate. Tomorrow was the day Reddick planned to move her to state prison, a place where no one could control what happened. But Rachel would not let fear hollow her out. She could see every piece of the truth slowly rising to the surface, and she was waiting for the one person she needed to appear. Not long after the cell door swung open, white light flooded in, forcing her to squint. A tall man entered, face worn with worry. Attorney Price. His suit was wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. Clearly, he had been squeezed by District Attorney Horn and Reddick. Yet he still came. He set a file folder on the small metal table. "Rachel, they want to fast-track your hearing. They pushed the court date to early next week." He exhaled. "The district attorney says he will recommend a lighter sentence if you plead guilty." Rachel looked at him, her lips curling faintly. A guilty plea was the end. Exactly what Reddick needed. And she would not gift it to him. "I need you to do one thing for me. Just one." Rachel pulled her chair closer and lowered her voice. "Tell Maya to check my father's fishing spot. She will understand. And you must not repeat that sentence to anyone else." Price nodded without asking questions. Perhaps he felt the weight behind those 2 words, the old place. Before leaving, he hesitated. "Rachel, what do you have that makes them this desperate?" She held his gaze for a long moment. She did not answer. But her eyes carried steel. When the door slammed shut, Rachel closed her own eyes. She imagined Maya opening the tackle box, uncovering the files their father left behind, tracking the trail that Rachel knew for certain Reddick had not erased. Warmth surged through her veins. They thought she was a cornered target, but that corner was exactly where she had set her trap. Near midnight, footsteps stopped outside the cell. Rachel opened her eyes just as the guard spoke. "You have a visitor. Not your lawyer. Not the district attorney." A man in uniform stepped inside, short brown hair, alert eyes. Officer Daniel Foster. He sat across from Rachel. The way he scanned the room made it obvious he was doing something he was not supposed to. After a short silence, Foster spoke quietly. I am here because I believe something is wrong. I reviewed your file. You do not look like someone who would do this. And there is something else you need to know. Chicago Internal Affairs assigned me to investigate Reddick's operations. He is connected to a much larger federal case. Rachel tilted her head slightly. She studied his breathing, each flick of his eyes. Was he a lifeline or another trap? I need evidence. Foster continued. Anything. Cameras, recordings, financials. Do you have anything at all? Rachel let out a faint laugh, soft but sharp enough to slice through the stale air of the cell. And if I said yes? Foster flinched. He had not expected that answer, but Rachel did not elaborate. She asked instead, why are you helping me? The real reason, not the assignment. Foster looked down at the table for several seconds before meeting her eyes. I have seen too much. Since I transferred to Westbridge, I have seen altered evidence logs, disappearing camera files, people being set up. And I know about your father. I know he died trying to expose Reddick. Rachel's heart tightened. In that moment, she saw something sincere flare in Foster's eyes. Not trust, not yet, but a possibility. She leaned forward, her voice slipping into the air like a blade through fabric. I have what you need, but I will not hand it over, not until I know which side you truly stand on. Foster nodded, slowly, accepting the challenge. As he reached the doorway, Rachel called after him. Daniel, if you want to help me, if what you said about the federal investigation is real, then be careful. Reddick has people everywhere, even in the FBI. Foster froze. His expression sharpened. I know, Rachel. And that is exactly why I came before it is too late. The heavy iron door closed. Rachel sat again in the dark, listening to the first raindrops tapping against the detention center's tin roof. She reached for the old wristwatch hidden beneath her prison shoe. 6 months of recordings, 6 months tracking Reddick's late-night runs, 6 months waiting for him to slip. That moment had arrived. The rain thickened outside, and Rachel understood in this game she was not the hunted. She was the one striking the match in the darkness, and Westbridge was about to ignite like a powder keg. That night, Maya barely slept. The files from her father's USB were spread across the wooden cabin table, the glow of the laptop screen deepening the shadows under her tired eyes. Outside the window, the Riverbend forest lay buried under thick fog, as if the world itself were holding its breath with her. But inside the cabin, the silence was not peaceful. It was a stretched wire pulled tight by 2 words running out. She understood one thing with painful clarity. If Rachel was transferred to state prison, every piece of evidence would become useless. Reddick needed only a single night to make her sister disappear. When the clock's hands slid past 3 o'clock in the morning, Sarah Kendall placed a cup of hot coffee on the table, her voice low and steady in a way that made the moment even more tense. Maya, we need to move before he gets Rachel out. Your father's notes mentioned a major shipment at Clearhaven Logistics. He believed that every time Reddick prepared a large operation, he cleared his obstacles first. Meaning Sarah paused. Meaning Rachel. Maya bit down on her lower lip. A sharp fear rose inside her, cold and precise, like the edge of a blade pressing against her skin. But the fear was quickly overtaken by a fiercer fire, the same fire that had burned through her for 10 years since her father died, the truth that had never been spoken. From the corner of the room, Alex Rivera looked up, eyes red but alert. He had broken into Clear Haven's internal server, an incredibly risky move, yet he had done it. He turned his laptop toward Maya. "This is the transport order. Reddick will be at the warehouse at 11 o'clock tomorrow night. And this," he opened another window, "is the prison transport route for tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the morning. They are moving Rachel before the hearing. Not by protocol." Maya stared at the two lines of information. They closed in on her like a pair of blades. If she saved Rachel too early, they would lose their chance to expose the warehouse operation. But if she waited too long, Rachel might not survive to see justice. Maya stood abruptly. Her voice was low but rang through the room with the finality of a starting gun. "We are not choosing between the two. We are doing both. Reddick gets taken down while his hands are still on that shipment. And Rachel must still be alive when it happens." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Maya, that is a federal task force operation, not something 3 people in an old wooden cabin can pull off." Maya looked straight at her friend, her eyes burning with a determination that refused to bend. "Then we do what my father did. No teams, no backup, only the truth." The room fell silent for a few seconds. In Sarah's expression flickered a flash of respect. Detective Samuel Monroe had fought for justice alone until his last breath. And now his daughter was standing at the same threshold. The phone rang suddenly, slicing through the tension like a blade. An unknown number. Maya hesitated for a heartbeat before answering. The voice on the other end froze her in place. "This is Harris." His voice trembled but held firm as if he had been running. "I do not have much time. I am ready to cooperate. But you need to hear this. Reddick has a man inside the Chicago FBI field office. His informant feeds him every step of the investigation. If you reach out to the feds, he will know before you even dial." Maya's pulse pounded so hard she could barely breathe. A federal investigation compromised from within. That meant their plan was still missing one critical link. Harris continued, his voice low like a confession. "I have stayed silent too long. This is my last chance to make it right. Tomorrow, I will wear a wire. I will talk to Reddick. I will confirm everything. If I do not walk out, the recording will automatically be sent to you." What he said next nearly knocked the breath out of her. Rachel was not just framed. She was being sent to state prison under the orders of someone outside the police department. And that order came from the very person overseeing the drug trafficking pipeline. Maya sank into her chair as if the weight of the truth had slammed into her chest. Sarah stepped beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Maya, we do not have time to be afraid. If Reddick senses we are digging, he will strike first." Alex added quietly but firmly, "We need direct evidence, not video, not documents. We need to catch him while he is touching the product." Maya drew in a long breath. The air was heavy with the smell of wet wood rain and the truth that had rotted for too long. Her father's face flashed in her mind, his eyes the way he silently documented everything, his final warning before he died. The closer you get to the truth, the harder the darkness tries to scare you. But you are the one who carries the light. Maya rose to her feet, spine straight, eyes sharp as a blade. "Tomorrow we expose his entire machine, and this time the darkness will have to retreat." The next morning, inside the visitation room at the Westbridge Detention Center, surrounded by the muffled chaos of conversations, separated by thick glass, Rachel Monroe walked in with dark circles under her eyes, yet her gaze was still sharp as a blade. She knew Maya would come. She knew her sister had understood the message, but she did not expect Maya to arrive looking as if she had stared into an abyss. Maya sat on the cold metal chair, her hand gripping a powered-off phone. Not to hide anything, but because it was trembling in her palm, as if the entire world outside the cabin had crashed onto her in a single night. Rachel needed only 1 second to know something far bigger than the USB had happened. "Tell me, Maya." Her voice was low but steady. "You would never look at me like that unless it was something serious." Maya drew a deep breath. "Reddick knows about the cabin. He knows you are investigating him. He left a message. I found all of Dad's files just like you expected. But there is something worse. Harris contacted me. He is ready to cooperate. And there is a mole inside the Chicago FBI working for Reddick." Rachel felt something go rigid inside her chest. A mole inside the FBI. That meant every time her father went to federal authorities seeking protection, every door he knocked on had been quietly shut from the other side. But the cold dread did not last long. Within seconds, it hardened into a molten anger, a fire strong enough to burn through despair. "I have video from the gas station." Maya continued quickly, as if afraid time itself would steal her chance to speak. "The camera caught Mark Davies putting the drugs into your trunk. I backed it up on 3 servers, 2 USB drives, and sent an encrypted copy to Sarah. And Alex found your transfer schedule. They plan to move you tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the morning. No reason, no notice, no protocol." Rachel leaned back in her chair. Her calmness only made Maya more unsettled. "I know," Rachel said quietly. "Reddick wants to clear the path for tomorrow night's shipment. He needs me gone before he makes his mistake. And he thinks I have nothing." Maya leaned so close that it seemed she wanted to break through the barrier and hold her sister. "Rachel, we can save you. Harris will wear a wire. Sarah is coordinating with a trusted federal prosecutor. Alex is monitoring the warehouse. But we need to." Rachel raised her hand, stopping Maya mid-sentence. She looked directly at her sister. There was trust in that stare and willpower, and a truth Maya had not yet heard. "The watch," Rachel said softly, almost like she was reciting a code. Maya frowned. Rachel tugged her sleeve up just enough to reveal the worn leather strap. To anyone else, it was nothing more than a simple accessory. But Maya understood instantly. "I recorded him," Rachel whispered. "His calls, his secret meetings, his visits to the warehouse, almost everything. 6 months, all stored on the micro SD hidden in the strap. It is encrypted to back up automatically every 12 hours. If I am transferred, killed, or lose contact, the entire archive goes to you, to Sarah, to Alex, and to 3 major news outlets." Maya's jaw dropped. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You planned this from the start?" Rachel smiled a smile without weakness. "You think I learned nothing from our father? You think I followed Reddick for 6 months without building a way out?" For a moment, Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Not from fear, from realization. Her sister was not a cornered victim. Her sister was a hunter waiting for her moment. "But if he finds out," Maya whispered. "He will not," Rachel replied calmly. "He thinks my phone and laptop were everything. He thinks I am just a passive public defender. He thinks I am weak. He thinks I have no power. And that is the one mistake big enough to destroy him." Just then, a guard approached and signaled that they had 2 minutes left. Maya pressed closer to the glass, panic rising. "Rachel, tonight I am meeting with everyone. We will take him down at the Clear Haven warehouse. And I will not let him move you before the truth comes out." Rachel gently placed her hand against the glass, as if trying to touch her sister through it. Her voice dropped heavy with warning. "Be careful with Foster. He is telling the truth, but someone inside the FBI is tracking his every move. And Harris. If he wears that wire, he becomes the first target." Maya nodded hard. "I know." Rachel held her sister's gaze and spoke the last words before the guard motioned for Maya to leave. "Maya, if anything happens to me, you must continue. You must bring the truth to light. Not for me. Not for Dad. But for everyone he ever hurt." Maya walked away, but her heart remained trapped in that small room. And Rachel, once the door locked behind her, sat down again, closing her eyes for a brief moment. Not out of fear, not out of despair, but because she knew the decisive hour was coming. And if she wanted to live long enough to see justice returned to her father, she had to defeat the most dangerous man in Westbridge on his own battlefield. The war had already begun, and this time, Rachel Monroe had 20 years of quiet fire burning behind her. On the afternoon before the prison transfer, the sky over Westbridge gathered heavy gray clouds as if warning of an incoming storm. Inside the wooden cabin, Maya, Sarah, and Alex sat around the old table where files maps extracted camera footage and scribbled notes covered every inch of the surface. The dim light streaming through the window made the scene look like a battlefield map. And in truth it was. They were preparing for a battle in which any mistake could cost a life. Maya was the first to break the silence. "Harris will wear the wire. He is meeting Reddick in the office at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I told him to steer the conversation toward the same questions Dad once pursued." Sarah nodded. "If Harris does it right, we will have direct confirmation that Reddick is funneling drugs out of the evidence warehouse. But the deeper he goes, the greater the danger." Alex pushed his laptop toward them. "This is the new footage I just extracted from the Riverport cameras. In the video, 3 officers entered the Clearhaven warehouse at 1:43 in the morning carrying large bags. But what made the room fall silent came afterward. A strange SUV arrived with its lights off, and the driver exchanged envelopes with Reddick. Maya stared at the paused frame, her hand rising unconsciously to her mouth. Not just police, businessmen, transport crews, private security, all involved. This was not a small network. This was an empire. Alex spoke softly, each word clear. If the FBI did not have a mole, this operation would have been exposed years ago. No one responded, because they all knew he was right. Maya stood abruptly and began pacing around the cabin like an animal forced to strike back. "Tonight, we need 3 things. First, proof that Reddick is moving the product. Second, Harris's recorded confession. Third, we keep Rachel out of his hands before 6 o'clock in the morning." Sarah braced both hands on the table. "The problem is we cannot be in 2 places at once. If we monitor the warehouse, we cannot stop the transfer. If we stop the transfer, we lose the only chance to catch him in the act." Maya stopped walking. Her eyes lit up as if a complete strategy had just snapped into place. "No, we do both. We do not split missions. We split the plan." Alex looked up, skeptical. Split how Maya lowered her voice every word like a line drawn on a war map. "Sarah, you will meet the federal agent our father once trusted, the only one he believed in. Give him Dad's USB. No phone calls, no emails. You must hand it to him directly. Alex, you will control the drone from the northern forest overlooking Riverport. Do not get close. Only record everything with infrared. If he touches the shipment, that is gold standard evidence. And you," Sarah asked, already knowing the answer would be the most dangerous part. "I am going into the detention center," Maya said without blinking. "I have to delay the transfer somehow." Just long enough until 6 o'clock in the morning. We do not need to win the whole war. We just need to keep Rachel alive until the evidence detonates." Alex inhaled sharply. "Maya, you are not a lawyer. That is not your role." "I am her sister," Maya cut in. "If anyone can sabotage Reddick's plan from the inside, it is me." At that moment, Maya's phone vibrated. A single message from an anonymous number. 4 words that made her skin tighten. "He knows tonight." Sarah snatched the phone immediately. "Do not let that shake you." "It only proves what we already suspected. Someone is watching the cabin, watching Harris, watching the FBI. Reddick's shadow stretches farther than we imagined, but the tighter he closes the circle, the easier it becomes to crush him." Maya stood still for a long moment, listening as if she could hear the pulse of the entire city. She sensed danger in the air, the cold metallic scent that always came before a storm. Reddick had played this game dozens of times. He was used to winning. He was used to silence. But this time he had forgotten something. The people he framed were no longer alone. She looked back at Sarah and Alex. Their eyes reflected the chaos of the room, but also something stronger: belief. Belief in Rachel, belief in the truth, and belief in Maya. "When our father was killed, no one stood with him," Maya said softly but sharply. "No one believed him. No one gave him a chance to speak his last truth. But this time we will not let history repeat itself. Reddick thinks he has the advantage because he holds power, but he forgets that real power is not in a badge. Real power is in the truth. And when the truth rises, even a badge can shatter like glass." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, long and heavy like a warning. Maya closed her eyes for one single second, then opened them again, her gaze colder and sharper than lightning. "Tonight we light up his darkness, and he will never realize he is stepping into the trap he built with his own hands more than 10 years ago." Night fell over West Bridge, like a black cloth pulled hard across rooftops, damp sidewalks, and buildings, exhaling cold breaths into the stormy air. The storm that had been forecast since afternoon finally stirred the treetops, creating metallic whispers in the dark. Inside the cabin, Maya Monroe sat still, her heartbeat pounding so loudly it felt like the ticking of a bomb. Sarah Kendall rechecked every file on Detective Samuel Monroe's USB, each document, each photo, each scribbled note, feeling like a bone pulled from the skeleton of a justice system that had rotted years ago. Near the window, Alex Rivera stared into the thickening darkness of the Riverbend forest, his hands resting on the drone controls, ready to launch at a moment's notice. Outside, the wind screamed in bursts, like the threatening whispers of buried secrets, secrets Reddick thought he had hidden, but were now clawing their way back to the surface. Maya opened her phone, staring at the map of the West Bridge Detention Center, the scheduled 6 o'clock transfer time, Harris's scattered updates. It felt like standing inside a ring of fire danger, closing in from every direction, every path blocked. Yet strangely, focus burned in her chest. Rachel was still alive. And as long as Rachel lived, Maya still had a battlefield. A burst of lightning sliced across the sky, bright for a single heartbeat. Maya looked at her 2 allies and inhaled deeply. It was time. There was no retreat left. We begin. Sarah left the cabin first, driving her weathered gray sedan toward the county line where the federal agent who once worked with Maya's father was stationed. She had to hand over the USB. No calls, no emails, no trail. Maya watched the taillights fade into darkness, anxiety twisting in her stomach. But Sarah was the only one with the experience to face the walls of the federal system. Maya trusted her. even if that trust flickered like a candle in high wind. Alex slung his backpack over his shoulder, checked his coat, and inspected the drone one last time. High-power craft infrared system, 40 times zoom lens, 4-hour battery encrypted signal. It would capture every movement Reddick made at the Clearhaven warehouse. Without turning around, Alex muttered, "Do not worry. My job is to see without being seen." Then he stepped into the forest, disappearing into the night as if he belonged to it. Maya remained alone in the shrinking cabin. The silence pressed against her chest. She opened the gas station footage again. Every time she watched it, her heart tightened as though an iron fist squeezed her lungs. Mark Davies slipping the bag of drugs into Rachel's trunk. The shamelessness of it. And yet the entire system was ready to believe or pretend to believe that Rachel was guilty. Maya felt as if she were standing under a blinding spotlight, forced to watch injustice roar back at her. She thought of Rachel's eyes that morning in the visitation room, calm, cold, full of secrets. Eyes not of someone cornered, but of someone holding her final card. Suddenly, Maya's phone vibrated, a message from Harris, a single sentence that jolted her upright as if struck by electricity. "I am in his office." The words shook, typed in haste. Maya felt her breath catch. Sarah was gone. Alex was already in place. And Harris, the only man inside Reddick's circle willing to break ranks, had just walked into the lion's mouth. She clenched her phone, staring at the screen. 3 minutes passed long as 3 hours. Then another message appeared. "He is calling someone. I will try to stall." Maya's blood ran cold. Someone the mole in the FBI. The ghost embedded between federal authority and Reddick's criminal empire, the same shadow that killed her father, imprisoned innocence, and framed Rachel. If Reddick was calling him, it meant he suspected something. Harris was standing on the edge of death. A gust of wind slammed into the cabin, rattling the window. Maya flinched, feeling the walls close in. She had to move. Now, she had to reach the detention center, delay the transfer, find Price, weaponize the one thing Reddick always underestimated: procedure. Maya shut her laptop, grabbed her coat, shoved her phone in her pocket, and ran into the rain. It struck her face like tiny bullets, freezing her skin, but she did not slow. She jumped into her car, turned the key, and the engine roared alive. She sped into the night. The road to Westbridge Detention Center felt longer than ever, or perhaps Maya felt every second more intensely. The wind howled, the storm surged, and streetlights smeared into glowing streaks in the rain. Maya saw fragments of her father in every flash of lightning, his hands flipping through case files, his weary sighs over wrongfully accused victims, his words that justice was not something that arrived on its own. It was something dragged from the dark by force. It felt as if he were sitting in the back seat, guiding her with his stubborn, weary courage. When Maya reached the gates of the detention center, the rain was so heavy she could barely see the sign. She lowered the window, soaked instantly, and held out her press badge. "I need to see Attorney Price. It is urgent." The guard hesitated, studying her expression. Before he could refuse, Maya added sharply, "If you turn me away, the press will demand to know why the detention center blocked a journalist during a highly publicized case." His jaw tightened, but he pressed the button and let her through. The hallway inside was cold, long, and smelled of sickly sweet disinfectant. Maya headed straight to the personnel meeting room where Price sat sorting through paperwork. He looked up, startled by Maya's fierce expression. "Maya, what Reddick wants to move my sister at 6 in the morning? No reason? No protocol? You know how wrong that is." Price's silence was confirmation enough. Maya lowered her voice, every word ringing like metal. I need you to file an emergency motion to delay the transfer, request a health evaluation, a psychological check, a transport audit. Anything that forces them to hold her until after sunrise. Price looked at her defeat, clouding his eyes. District Attorney Horn will deny it. They will call it a stalling tactic. Maya stepped closer, her voice trembling but with a force far sharper than logic. You worked with my sister. You know she would never commit this crime. You know what they did to my father. This is not just a case. This is our only chance. If you do not do this now, there will be nothing left to save in the morning. Price stared at her for a long time, a very long time. Then he nodded, once slow and heavy, as if finally stepping back onto the side of justice. I will do it. While Price prepared the paperwork, Maya sat on the metal chair, head tilted back. Rain hammered the windows like impatient fists. Her phone suddenly vibrated. A message from Alex. Drone up. Movement confirmed. They are gathering. Maya's heart seized. The second message came immediately. Reddick just arrived. And the third message short and devastating. Someone is following me. She sat up straight. Before she could answer, another message appeared, this time from Harris. He senses something. I have to cut the call. Harris disappeared from the conversation like a man leaping off a train headed toward a cliff. Maya's pulse spiked not from fear, but from the realization that the battle had outgrown their plan. Reddick could feel the darkness shifting around him. And that darkness was them. Maya stood as Price handed her the file. I submitted the motion. They cannot move her until it is denied. But Maya Reddick will know who did this. Maya answered with a blade-sharp whisper. He always knows. But this time, he will not react fast enough. She ran through the hallway, her footsteps echoing like war drums. When she pushed through the exit doors, the rain struck her hard, but she did not stop. She looked up at the black sky as thunder rolled like a furious animal. Tonight was the convergence of all storms. The storm in the sky, the storm in their lives, the storm of the truth. And no matter how long the night lasted, Maya knew one thing with absolute certainty. The stone wall Reddick built for years was cracking. It needed only one more push, one final strike, and the empire he believed was eternal would collapse. Night dropped over West Bridge like a 1,000-pound black curtain soaked in storm humidity. The wind lashed against buildings in violent slaps, carrying the cold metallic scent of a night on the brink of disaster. Maya Monroe drove through the dense rain, each drop striking the windshield like claws, tearing at the last barrier between her and the chaos rising outside. Streetlights blurred, stretching into trembling trails of light. The car shook with every gust of wind, but Maya did not slow down. She had to get back to the cabin. She had to monitor Alex. She had to know what Reddick was doing inside the warehouse, and most of all, she had to keep Rachel alive until dawn. Fear crawled up her spine not for herself, but because of the silence from Alex. His last message. Someone is following me echoed in her mind like a voice in a cave. When she turned onto the dirt road leading to the cabin, she felt it instantly. Something was wrong. Not the lights, not the wind, but the silence. A silence too deliberate, too heavy, as if someone had thrown a blanket over the forest to hide something beneath it. She killed the engine, opened the door, and was hit by a sheet of freezing rain, but she ran anyway. The cabin was dark, not ordinary darkness. Darkness pulled violently away from light. She pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam trembled. Then she heard footsteps. Not Alex, not Sarah. Heavy, careful, but not careful enough to belong to someone who knew the forest. Maya instantly switched off the light and pressed her back to a tree. She held her breath. Her heartbeat thundered inside her ears. A silhouette moved past the cabin. Tall, broad shoulders, dark uniform, a heavy-duty flashlight in hand. Maya knew exactly who he was, one of Reddick's men, the one who had followed Alex, the one sent to erase whatever Alex had seen in the warehouse. She grabbed her phone and typed quickly. "There's someone near the cabin. Where are you?" No reply. Her stomach dropped, but she refused to think the worst. She crouched low, moving along the tree line, circling toward the back of the cabin. The man continued checking windows, sweeping his light across the walls. He was searching for signs of someone working inside. Maya gripped her phone tightly, inhaled sharply, and stepped deeper into danger. Behind the cabin was the drone's receiver, Alex's last setup point. She reached it. The device was still warm, still running, which meant the drone was still airborne, which meant Alex had escaped capture. Relief slipped out of her chest in a fragile exhale. She turned on the receiver screen. The image appeared an aerial view of Clear Haven logistics silhouettes moving under dim yellow lights. Heavy bags being carried out, trucks arriving with their headlights off. Maya zoomed in. Reddick stood in the center of the yard. The yellow glow lit his face, icy, focused, filthy down to the bone. Beside him were Davies and two other officers she recognized from her father's files. They exchanged envelopes with two private security contractors, a transaction worth tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more. The pressure on Maya's chest tightened. This was the moment her father had tried to capture, the moment that killed him, the moment that buried the truth. But tonight she was witnessing it raw, exposed. She began taking screenshots, rapidly sending encrypted copies to Sarah and multiple backup servers. She would not let any single piece of evidence live only in her hands. She was scattering it like seeds in case she was silenced. Suddenly, red text flashed across the screen, signal interference detected. Maya froze. That meant only one thing: someone was trying to take down the drone. She opened the radar feed. The drone's beacon showed it was being jammed from the ground. Someone with a jammer. Someone in the forest. Someone hunting Alex. Someone dangerously close to her. The flashlight beam sliced across the cabin window. Maya ducked instantly. Her pulse spiked. One thought cut through her mind. If he sees me, I die here. Her phone buzzed. A message. From Alex. "Do not enter the cabin. He's waiting. I'm by the creek. Drone's going down. Grab the backup drive. Leave the forest now." Maya bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. She did not hesitate. She did not panic. She moved. She pressed the hidden wooden panel her father had built years ago. A small compartment opened. Inside was the backup hard drive, Alex's insurance for this exact scenario. She shoved it into her waterproof coat, and at that moment, a sharp crack erupted above the trees. The drone had been shot down. She heard the rotors clatter against the branches and thud onto the forest floor, a clean, brutal landing. The receiver screen went black. The signal died. Everything Alex captured now existed only in the drive she carried, which meant Maya had become the primary target. Outside, the man's voice cut through the storm. He had heard the crash. He radioed in drone down, checking the cabin. His words sliced through the darkness. Then he kicked the cabin door. Maya knew he was seconds away from discovering the missing drive. She had no choice but to run. She slipped out the back, darted through the trees, and bolted toward the creek where Alex was hiding. Rain whipped her face. The wind hurled needles of water into her skin. But she kept running. Branches clawed her arms. Mud sucked at her shoes. Her lungs burned. Footsteps pounded behind her. He had noticed the back door. He was chasing her. Maya did not look back. She ran as if the earth itself were pushing her forward. Near the creek, she saw a faint flicker Alex's tiny signal light on a tree stump. She sprinted toward it. A hand grabbed her from the darkness, pulling her down. Alex. Soaked. Breath ragged. Alive. "We need to go. Now." There are two of them. One circling north. She nodded, breathless. They pushed through the forest boots, sinking into mud storm, drowning every sound. They took the long route, avoiding patrol patterns. When the parking area finally came into view, Maya heard faint radio murmurs behind them. They were sweeping the woods, hunting them. Maya's car came into sight. She handed Alex the hard drive. He would rendezvous with Sarah the moment she returned. Alec whispered one sentence, hoarse, but steady. "Keep Rachel alive. We will keep the truth alive." Then he vanished into the trees, swallowed by rain and darkness. Maya climbed into her car, slammed the door shut, her hands shaking not from fear, but from an hour of relentless tension. She buckled in, turned the key, and gripped the wheel. She knew her next move. She had to get back to the detention center. She had to stand guard through the night. She had to make sure no one reached Rachel. She had to hold the line until the first light of dawn broke across the horizon. She has to survive until morning. Maya accelerated into the night, leaving behind the voices of the hunters, her father's old cabin, and the storm churning through the forest, driving straight into another storm waiting ahead. A storm with a name, Jonathan Reddick. As her tires sliced through a sheet of water, Maya made a silent vow. If the darkness wanted to swallow her sister tonight, it would have to swallow her first. Dawn was approaching. The rain had softened, but the wind still lashed against the concrete walls of the West Bridge Detention Center, as if warning that everything was moments away from breaking open. Maya sat in her car less than 30 meters from the gate, dark circles under her eyes. After a sleepless night, her gaze fixed on the row of windows in the women's unit. Every flicker of a light made her hold her breath. 6 o'clock was approaching like the edge of a blade. Inside, Rachel Monroe sat upright on the metal bed. She had not slept. She could not. Every passing minute felt stretched into an hour. She could smell the rust on the bars, the dampness of the thin mattress, and the fear radiating from the woman sharing the cell with her. But Rachel herself felt no fear. Only a cold, piercing focus. Just a few more hours. If Maya succeeded, if Alex escaped safely, if Sarah delivered the USB, if Harris was still alive to get the recording out, Reddick's entire empire would collapse. 5:40 in the morning. Metal clanged in the hallway. Rachel rose instantly. Her instincts screamed, "He moved the schedule! They are here early!" 2 officers appeared at the cell door, faces carved from stone. One spoke, voice flat. "Prepare for transfer!" Rachel stared at them without blinking. This was the moment. Either victory or disappearance. Outside the gate, Maya saw the prison transport van roaring to life earlier than expected. She shot upright, her heartbeat crashing against her ribs. Gripping her phone, she sent one message to Sarah and Alex. He moved early. They're taking her out. Begin. In that instant, the entire city of West Bridge seemed to hold its breath. Judgment Day had begun. When we look back at everything Rachel Maya and their allies had to face, one truth stands unshaken. Justice does not appear on its own. It needs people who are willing to step into the dark, who are willing to risk their own safety to drag the truth into the light. This story is not just about a corrupt police chief or a conspiracy exposed. It is a reminder that a system is only strong when it is watched, and darkness only grows when we stay silent. If you believe stories that uncover the truth must continue to be told, make sure to like and subscribe so you will not miss the next pursuit of justice. And if you stayed until the end, leave a short comment. Just 3 words as our shared commitment: protect the truth.